I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, at the 420 studio down by the lagoon. We're here, and I'm bringing back my good buddy and compadre, Brother Scott, who wants to clarify a few things that he talked about in last week's classic edition of Comfortably Zoned Radio, where in 10 minutes, Scott really helped us all demystify the banking situation in Greece and the recent elections. It was, as far as I know, the best 10 minutes in podcast radio, and certainly the best I've had on this show. Part of it was I only got to talk for 32 seconds. It was great, and I got to listen to Scott. But there are a few things he wants to clarify, and hang on, because in the second segment, my guest is a terrific woman, Ann Shannon, who's a musical icon in the Bay Area, a performer and a teacher, and a former New Yorker, and we have a blast. So hang on for that, and here's Brother Scott.
Ralph, thanks for letting me have this opportunity. You're too extravagant with your praise. I can't live up to that.
Oh, you'll try. Please try, Brother Scott. Please try for me.
Just knock it off.
All right.
You're being silly. I gave one man's initial impression from what was happening in Greece when the Greek electorate voted no and rejected the demands put forth by the European Union, the European Central Bank, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Those organizations were putting certain demands on the Greek economy and the Greek political leadership, and they put it to a vote, and overwhelmingly, the austerity measures, as they call them, being advocated by the European Union, were rejected resoundingly. And now they're back to talking about it all some more and renegotiate the terms of a huge bailout that it is said the Greek economy needs, or everybody's going to resort to cannibalism. So anyway, the long and short of it is, I left something out that I shouldn't have, and I didn't mean to, and it was this. And I probably left a whole lot of things out that I'm not even aware of, but this is one that I'm aware of. We're used to thinking this in terms of national identities, like the Germans have this position and the Greeks say this, but it's really not like that. It's not like that at all. That isn't to say there isn't a national consensus in either camp at any given time, but there are diverse interests on both sides in this whole situation, such that the German banks and the German people are at loggerheads on some things, and their interests are not the same at all. They don't coincide at all. Landlords' interests don't coincide with tenants' interests, or at least they must contend with each other. It's the nature of the beast. Same with factory owners and their employees. Their economic interests, at the very least, do not always coincide, and sometimes are at loggerheads with each other through no fault of any individual personality. It's just the system that pits them against each other, and it's a systematic situation, more than a personal one and more than even a national one. And so the bottom line is this: the German banks don't have the interests of the German workers and Johnny Lunch Buckets in mind. They don't have their interests foremost. Their interests are counterposed in many cases to the interests of their depositors, just as they are here when the banking crisis hit the United States. Everyone thought at least the big commercial banks were getting away with raping and pillaging and plundering like pirates for way too long. for a long, long time and taking great risks with other people's money. And yet they tried to deflect blame for the crisis that brought about and the disaster that resulted. They tried to shove the blame off on poor people who bought houses that they couldn't afford.
Some of whom were taken advantage of, indeed.
Whether they were or whether they won't. I won't argue that point. That's probably true. That's certainly true. But the point is this. The banks did not have the interests of the people or even their own depositors at heart here in this country. And why would we think it would be any different in Germany? They don't have the interests of German workers and German Main Street people foremost in mind when they're doing these negotiations. They're all about big money for big players in a big market, and it's a big gambling casino. And they took risks that they had already exercised their due diligence about and looked the situation over and had their accountants and their lawyers and their economists and their high bank officers and all kinds of expensive experts explain to them the risks, the benefits, the upsides, the downsides, and they went for it. And of course, it looks in hindsight, and to many people even beforehand, it looked like a foolish risk. They took it anyway, and they lost. And now they want the Greek pensioners to pay for it. And when we talk and think in terms of national identity and use that language and those concepts to try to understand what's at the bottom of this, we're never going to get the clear picture. It's always going to be out of focus and too simplistic and wrong-headed. It's not Germany versus Greece, and it's not France or Brussels versus Greece. It's those big players, those huge banks too big to fail, because they got them there too. You've heard the phrase, and what it really means is they have a license to plunder and fail and then be rescued at our expense. That's what happened here, and that's what they're trying to run down in Europe, in Greece, and Greece right now.
Was there anything done to prevent that happening here in the future? Is there some sort of commission that's set up to now look at banking with a clearer focus and learn by the mistake that happened? Or are we just ready for another crash brought on by a bunch of greedy motherfuckers? Really?
That's a rhetorical question. Anyway,
really good.
I'm not an economist, really. They don't want it to happen again. Nobody wants it to happen, I don't think, except people who bet against the market.
But is somebody looking at it with some control that can raise a jaundiced eye, just anything like that?
Congressional and legislative reforms have been proposed, and executive orders have been written, I presume, in an effort to reform, quote unquote, the system so it doesn't happen again, or doesn't happen in precisely the same way at least. And those efforts are always ongoing and always doomed to fail, because there's a way around it. There's the golden rule applies here, and we've talked about that before. What's the golden rule?
Them's with the gold make the rules.
So the rules that govern banking were written by the bankers, and they're bankers' rules. And the politicians who uphold them are bankers' politicians. And we have that here, and they have that also in Germany. And the interests of those bankers and those politicians, who are the bankers' politicians, are not the same and do not coincide, and in fact are diametrically opposed. One only succeeds at the expense of the other when their interests conflict, and their interests conflict daily. To be blunt, profits increase as labor costs go down. Okay. So whenever labor wants an increase in earned wages, it comes at the expense of the profit margin. There's no getting around that, whether you have a nice boss or a mean boss or whatever.
But in the long term, it increases the profit margin if the boss is willing to hold out for the long term, because you have more satisfied workers producing better products, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was very clear. Anything else you want to clarify?
Just to underline again that the interests of the German bankers are not the same and are in fact counterposed to the interests of the German workers, working classes, and the interests of the Greek bankers are similarly not the same and in fact contrary to the interests of the average Greek worker or farmer. And we should keep that in mind and not think of this in terms of Germany versus Greece or the European Union versus the Greeks. You got to look at the class question, and that should be foremost. And many things become clear when you start with that standpoint and that vantage point.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. That's beautiful. I want to say two things. First of all, to stress the importance of all of this, to those of you who, like myself, are really not as learned as Scott and not as able to digest the implications of finance. Didn't do well with finance all my life. But I do know this. All right, but how many wars have been decided over over a history of just this kind of situation? So it's incredibly important that this gets solved peacefully, and I thank you for clarifying it, and I want you to clarify. I just want to ask you what you think of what's happening with Bernie Sanders, his campaign. Are you surprised by anything? And are you I'm pleasantly surprised, but is there anything that you see that you didn't expect that I might have led you on to a long time ago? I think there's a shifting tide on one level or another that makes all this possible. By all of this, I mean a grassroots campaign that could make this guy a viable contender for the Democratic nominee. Are you surprised by anything? And what do you think's been happening? Here we go. And let me date this a little bit. This is July 9th, 10th, something like that, in the year 2015. So we have a long way to go before the election. And here's Scott with an update from one man's opinion of what he thinks is happening. Real quick.
You asked two questions.
Okay.
Was I surprised? Yeah. I'm surprised that he has managed to attract the crowds that he's attracted.
Okay.
Well, the second one was, what was the second question?
The second question was, what do you make of it all? Do you see something? Do you think he has a viable chance right now? And have you heard your feel of things? Has things changed with people? Are they looking at this guy different? Remember, this is first Jewish president and first admitted socialist potential candidate, and first admitted socialist that's ever got this far in the polls, this far along.
I hate to disabuse you of that notion, but that is just factually wrong.
Okay, is there a socialist?
In the early 1900s.
Oh, okay.
The American socialist Eugene V. Debs ran for president right around World War I from prison where he'd been sent.
But he wasn't Jewish, which is a prison within itself. I'm Jewish, folks. Yeah. No, I said he's Jewish, which is first Jew to come this far, except Lieberman or whatever his name is. He's a trading bastard, a trader of a bastard.
Lieberman from Connecticut.
Right. He was a disappointment to a lot of people. Okay. But so and he never got this far as I know.
But I just want to make things clear. He wasn't the first socialist by any means.
But he was the first. Oh, he was. Okay, but that goes back to something that I don't know about. And who ran for president that year? Please.
Eugene V. Debs.
But who ran as he was a contender for a while? Who did he contend with?
Woodrow Wilson, I believe.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I'm wrong. Could have been Taft. Could have been Teddy Roosevelt. I can't remember. But that wasn't the point I want to make. Not who was his opponent. He ran from prison where he'd been sent because he and his party and their followers, of whom there were many, didn't support the American military effort of the American government in World War I. They were opposed to that war. And they paid a dear price for that. And he ran for president from prison. And he got a very respectable number of votes. I can't remember the percentage. It might have been in the low double digits or the high single digits.
All right.
From prison.
From prison, which
and I will be very surprised if Bernie Sanders comes anywhere close to that.
Oh, really? You don't think he'll get high single or low double digits?
I'm talking about the general.
Oh,
election.
so if he ran against, say, Jeb Bush, he wouldn't get 10 to 12% of it, really?
No. Let me say it again.
That's the general election.
Here's the bar that's being set. Eugene V. Debs ran for president as an independent socialist on the Socialist Party ticket right around World War I, and he ran from prison, and he managed to get a lot of votes. I don't mean to say he came in second. He was an outside party candidate. He came in a distant third, but he got a substantial number of votes. I don't remember the number, but it was a lot.
Okay.
Especially for somebody running under those circumstances. Here's my challenge. I don't think Bernie Sanders will come anywhere near to approaching or equaling, much less surpassing, that record. He won't get that many votes.
In the primaries?
We're talking about the general election.
But in other words, if he ran against Bush, you don't think he'd get 12%, 15, 18, 48%, let alone 55%, which I think he'd get.
I'm making a bet about reality, and you're answering me with a fantasy. He's not going to run against Jeb Bush because he's not going to get...
Well, how's he coming in the primaries against Hillary?
I need to finish my thought. He's not going to run against Bush because he's not going to win the primaries in the Democratic Party, and he'll have to decide at some point whether to endorse the candidate. Looks like it'll probably be Hillary Clinton at this point in time, but who knows? He'll either have to endorse the Democratic Party candidate or maintain an independent candidacy on another party name or another party ticket.
Or accept the vice presidential nomination.
I don't think he's going to get that.
Oh.
We're not postulating that. We're saying when he loses the primaries, those are his options. If you want to throw in accept appointment in the Clinton White House, yeah, I guess so if that's offered to him, but that's conjecture. My point is this.
Well, let's say he got 30%. Let's say he got 40% of the votes in the primary. You don't think that they'd come together and he'd be a vice president candidate? He got Biden in there now. He goes to funerals and buries people. And I wasn't making jest of the loss of a really tremendous kid. But that's what vice presidents do, basically. So, but you don't think that he'd be enough influence to garner some power?
You're playing with fantasies. He'll never get there. That's my point.
He's there, baby. Look at his New Hampshire numbers.
No. He's got a long way to go before he'll be even close to there.
We'll play this back. Then what are you surprised about? You said you were surprised? You said yeah?
He's come farther than I would have thought.
Okay, we're going to keep
this.
Okay, good. We'll keep this going because we got 2 more 6-month periods before we could even come close to the final, because then it comes down to the race between summertime and November. Comes down to the race, and with 2 6-month periods ahead. I'll check in with you from time to time, see how things are going.
I want a last word.
Of course.
An uninterrupted last word.
Oops.
I brought up Eugene Debs, and we should know this and keep this in mind when you think about Bernie Sanders. Eugene Debs ran on an independent party ticket as a socialist under the Socialist Party name against America's involvement in World War I, and So it was in the middle of a whole lot of patriotic fervor. And he ran against the capitalist system explicitly.
You don't think Bernie's doing that?
Not even close. Now listen, here I want my point uninterrupted. The point is that Bernie Sanders has chosen another route and has another program as well. And we'll see if he comes anywhere close to setting the kind of very impressive record that Eugene V. Debs set back in the early 1900s when he ran for president from prison.
On the third party. So
hello?
Right? Yeah, but you think Bernie's running on a third party? Unless you consider...
no, he's not.
All right. So you're comparing apples. You're comparing apples to oranges.
And I prefer the oranges.
In this case.
Yeah.
But you are. It's an unfair comparison,
I'll take Eugene
Counselor.
Debs over Bernie Sanders any day.
Okay. We'll get into that. What is? You said Bernie Sanders isn't running with a slap in the face against capitalism, so to speak. What is he running for? You said there's something else.
You're mischaracterizing what I said. Eugene V. Debs' slogans were along these lines: we must dismantle and destroy this capitalist system and replace it with a socialist one. That's what we must do. Vote for me. It's along those lines. That's what his platform sounds like. Bernie sounds like...
he's going to modify it by taking away all...
he's going to modify and reform it in order to save it from itself. Good luck with that.
Why?
Because it's a fantasy.
Why is it a fantasy? You can tell me why you think it's a fantasy. It's just one man's opinion.
Based on your own experience and the listener's own experience and my own experience with the way the system works. It's like a shopping cart with a bad wheel that makes it lurch into the...
So it can't be saved by anybody?
Not that I've ever seen.
Well, what?
Every reform ends up leading to the next big crisis that is exponentially bigger than the one before.
I can hope to get that you'll only be every 6 months when we revisit this from here on. Pleasantly surprised. Well, you didn't say pleasantly, but certainly surprised, right?
Well, I like the fact that to the extent that the S word is used in reference to Bernie Sanders, and I don't see him bringing it up very much, it puts the S word on the table and opens the topic for discussion. That's about it.
The S word?
He's a socialist.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
He's supposed to be a socialist.
Okay.
He's running as a Democrat. I ask you what he more likely is. Is what you do speaks louder than what you say.
Well, that goes back to labeling, and I think the whole labeling that says, here's some preposterous stuff. Let's label Obama and Clinton as Democrats. Ha, 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 ha. That's cute. They get to run in the Democratic Party. We both agree they're Republicans, am I correct? They're moderate Republicans.
Not self-avowed. Bernie's a self-avowed socialist running as a Democrat.
I think
he had to check his socialist jacket at the door, or they wouldn't let him in.
Okay, and I might ask, what's wrong with that, Mama? But
I'm only going to say it one more time. I got 3 words for you. Eugene V. Debs.
Okay.
Google it.
I will, and I hope my listening audio Googles the same. Great segment, Scott, as usual. We're going to check out, and I'm going to implore you, as I do at the close of every segment, and my listening audience too. Keep your dreams wet, keep your humor dry, keep your kids out of military recruiting stations. It's bad. Bad for all. It's not right. It's bad. Not good, bad. And off the laps of clerics that wear dresses... Generally speaking, they're not all bad. One apple doesn't ruin the entire bunch. But 380,000 reported cases worldwide does ruin that barrel. So, before you take your kid to anywhere that requires supervision of your child, be very, very careful. And if anybody wants to touch and frolic with your child... no matter what they're wearing, that's bad. Bad. So, and here, I'm going to end it. keep on keeping on. Adios, amigos and amigas.